it's a team. And so for me, I enjoy the cattle side. I enjoy the grass side. And I understand some of the science, but having somebody like you guys that can really get it like just super deep into the science and know that we're pulling in the same direction.
This is an episode you do not want to miss. Let's get started.
We want to welcome you to the Soil Talks podcast. Today, we're going to dive deep into Ballantine Farms out in Durango, Colorado with the general manager, Joel Leman. Joel, thanks for coming on today.
Thank you, Brandon. Pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. Yeah. So they brought you into Ballantine Farms right at a year ago now, right? We're taking this system that is a conventional type of a system and we're turning it into a regenerative system. And so if you could, we'll just jump right in and we'll start talking about the regenerative side of things, where you actually kind of cut your teeth in the regenerative agriculture and cattle side. Joel, he has massive amounts of experience with cattle, with animals, and with soil health. And so if you could just kind of give us a synopsis or a back view of where you learned about regenerative agriculture, about putting cattle onto farms, turning soil into healthy soil. Where'd you learn about it, Joel?
Really, the first major step in my journey of learning about regenerative agriculture was in Sonora, Mexico, in the middle of the desert. So I was running a cattle operation down there, a seed stock operation. And we had got some irrigated ground in order to raise our heifers on, something with a little more protein, a little more nutrition than your traditional, desert ground. And we needed to do it as low input as possible. Capital was minimal working in that environment. And so we took a piece of ground that was essentially overgrazed, continuously grazed. And as I looked at options on how we could run that place more efficiently, stumbled on a different way of doing things, and it piqued my interest. And I started reading and talking to people and listening to podcasts and watching videos. And yeah, that was really the first step. I was just looking for something that was going to make financial sense, as well as take better care of the soil.
Sure, yeah, to be able to get, like you said, the protein levels up, to be able to get a little bit healthier soils, for that younger cattle. That's interesting. So tell us a little bit then also about it, if you don't mind. So you basically took desert soil, turned it into a regenerative system. Obviously, you said you watched a lot of podcasts, you learned over time on how to do it. So before that, was it all just a kind of a conventional system, the whole operation that you were working on? Did you own it, or were you working with people down there? How did it work?
Yeah. I was actually managing the ranch for a larger corporation, and the majority of the ranch was not irrigated, just desert ground. So cactus and sparse grass throughout rocky terrain. And so that side of the operation stayed pretty much the same, but we got about 40 acres of irrigated ground. It was on a river bottom, so very sandy. And that ground, before we purchased it, was just grazed as one big section. So it was cleaned off. It was, down to the dirt all the time, and let the cattle just kind of nibbling the tips of whatever grass was sprouting. And so as we took that over, then my goal there was to have as many head as possible. I wanted to be an operation. And so I knew that I needed to allow in what was happening. And so that's where rotational grazing started coming in. And we started to manage the ground in a way that really minimized our fertilizer inputs because of how we were grazing it, how we were using the cattle as a tool to benefit that.
Well, that's perfect. Yeah. So just explain to us a little bit, whenever you did that and you started to do rotational grazing, mob grazing, whatever you want to call it, at the end of the day, how did you guys do it in the middle of the desert? Did you guys set up electric fence? Like, how did you accomplish that? Or what did the operation kind of look like in order to get that rotational grazing and not only that, but the mob grazing type of situation going out there in the desert?
In the center of the property, there were some pretty big cottonwood trees. And I knew that, in the Sonoran Desert, we needed the cattle to have opportunity to get the shade when needed in the middle of the day. And so I put my water tanks there. I put my salt mineral there. And then I basically from there had an alleyway running from end to end. And then, so I had half of it on one side of that alleyway and half of the property on the other side of that, 10, 12 gates on either side. Okay. And then with electric fence, I would partition off, or depending on what season we're in, but sometimes we're moving every 3 days, sometimes every 2 days, sometimes every day. And when growing was really just kicking off and going quick, we're actually rotating 2 and 3 times a day. And so I would set up the daily pasture with electric fence, which would lead back to that alleyway. And then they could walk in that alleyway back to shade, water, whatever else they needed. And so we would just go around the circle, 30 to 45 day rotation. And down there, we could do that year round. So there was kind of a warm season, cool season. So there's different grasses that were always kind of coming in to being lush and pushing hard, but there wasn't a season like there is up here in the States quite a bit. You know, you get into the winter, stuff freezes and then just kind of sits there for the winter. We could grow grass year round. It was just a variety of grasses that thrived at different seasons in the year.
Gotcha. Yeah. So like you said, here in the States, sometimes we have those dormant periods, which soil ecology, it slows down. You know, there's things, so it kind of puts you on pause over the winter and then you get a re-ramp back up. But what did you notice when you started to actually see like that desert soil turning around, you know, from the rotational grazing, putting the cattle on there? What did you start to notice first that really was like, yep, you know what, this is, you know, everything I've watched on YouTube or whatever that may be, these podcasts, listening to it, yep, this is actually working out here. What were some of the telltale signs of it?
I mean, the main thing that I watched was just what was thriving. So in the beginning, you know, we had pigweed or amaranth, we had malva. We could say all the names in Spanish and maybe not as much in English just because that's how I learned them down there. But we had what would be considered weeds, you know, above our heads. So when we were putting out electric fence, we were having to go out with a machete ahead of time and cut a path in order to put up that hot wire. And then we would graze it intensively. We'd push it hard. We would really hit it hard and then move on. And so, you know, I would say probably starting out, we were looking at 10 to 15% of our plant composition was going to make a grass or two. And the rest of it was just thistles and other weeds, forbs. And then really within the first life cycle of the plants, so kind of within the first season, we knocked it back enough that stuff wasn't going to seed. You know, we had some pretty thick stalks and stuff out there, but we were able to trample those well just because of our density. And then within the first year, 2 years, you know, we were probably 90% grass. And we seeded in a little bit of clover, to help fix some of that nitrogen. But really it was just grazing it at the right time and letting it rest to get reestablished.
Man, that's great. That is. So now fast forward. So that's kind of where you cut your teeth in the regenerative side of things, saying, hey, man, I know this works. We built this out. We've done it in the desert, which there's some benefits, like you said, year round grazing. You know, we don't really have those temperature dips in the winters and things like that. But now you took that knowledge, you took the wisdom that you took from down in Sonora, Mexico, and now you headed to another operation before Ballantine Farms, or how did that kind of work? You went to just another operation to kind of bring that same knowledge in, or what happened before you got to Ballantine?
So I moved back to the States, up here to the southwest region of Colorado. And I got a job managing a cattle ranch. There's more conventional cattle ranch. There was some talk there of bringing in some regenerative practices, doing some rotational grazing. But as time went on, it was more kind of thinking maybe someday, but there wasn't a lot being put into place. So it was a conventional cattle operation. You know, you're haying a good chunk of your ground to get through the winter, you know, pouring on the fertilizer so that you can grow feed to feed the animals. And so it's a standard cattle operation. And then, so as I was experienced and my interest, and asked me to come and change their operation here. So it's been, in the family 40 to 50 years, and pretty much just conventional hay operation, no cattle involved, just baling hay and sending it down the road. So they wanted something that was going to provide a little more stability financially long term. They looked over the past years and what has happened to input costs, and where there hasn't been a whole lot of increase in prices of hay. They saw a business that was lacking, let's say, as well as try and stabilize and really take care of their asset here. So they asked me to come on and put together a 3 to 5 year strategic plan for taking it really in a pretty drastic, different direction.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I know, I talked to Chris with Ballantine Farms, 2 years ago, and that's kind of when he was that said, hey man, I'm interested in doing this. How are we going to, convert this over in our company? We can definitely provide, the microbial side of things. We can provide the microalgae, the soil amendments, the things to help speed that up. We're not in the cattle business by any means, but, we told them, hey, we could help you in these ways. But if you didn't change that conventional aspect of the farm, it would still, yes, we would be able to cut inputs. Yes, we'd be able to do those things, but still it wouldn't actually be a fully regenerative system. And I know he looked a long time, Ballantine Farms looked a long time to find the right fit for it. And it's not an easy thing to do, to find somebody that understands it, that's passionate about it. And then not only that, to then be hands off and say, this is what we want to do, create the plan for me. And, ended up being you, Joel. I feel like Ballantine Farms very lucky to have you and vice versa, right? It's a great partnership, it seems like, because they really have a vision, and you're the one that's just laying that vision out and saying, yeah, you know what, we can do this and let's move forward. So I know it took some time because there was another farm manager that was at the farm at the time that was obviously conventional, right? Like it was, we're going to go out and we're going to have war on weeds when there's weeds in the field, and we are going to till the ground and we're going to replant it, and we're going to, like you said, chop the hay, send it down the road, and didn't really have that aspect of trying to keep a lot of those resources on farm in order for the regenerative side of that. And so when they brought you in, and even you and I, we started working together and starting to discuss this, we kind of told you the same thing. Like, these are the things we can help you with. We can get you the microbes back that's been destroyed over the years and replace those into the soil. We can bring the microalgae. We can bring all the amendments, but still there is that piece that we needed that you really brought in, is the animals, right? So let's talk a little bit about that. So, what role does the cattle play in that regenerative operation? Now at Ballantine Farms, it's been 1 year since you started. I know you got some cattle on the ground this year. So just kind of walk us through that and tell us kind of like, what does that cattle play, or what animals did you have on the farm this year? What roles they kind of played, if you would?
Sure. Before I answer that question, you just brought up something about how Chris and I work really well together, the owner and myself, and also now with you on the team as well. And that's really what it takes is a team. And so for me, I enjoy the cattle side. I enjoy the grass side, and I understand some of the science, but having somebody like you guys that can really get it like just super deep into the science and know that we're pulling in the same direction that's why we're doing well, is because of that combination. So we have an owner who sees, okay, this is the vision, I'm on board, go do it. Like you were saying, we each kind of play our roles.
Sure.
And that's why the system moves forward, because we each have our strengths and we're working together that way. And so I look at the same way. So growing grass is kind of just the first step. But then what do you do with that grass? Grass that's never taken back, that's never kind of chopped at a little bit, either by a machine or by an animal, is going to grow stagnant. It's just going to sit there and you're not getting any production out of it. It's actually good for grass to be grazed. And so what we did is, it's a long transition. We're not going to do everything in the first 3 months. And so we're slowly establishing, perennial grasses as well as legumes in our pastures. And so this first year, there was a lot of new seed coming up, and we're looking to hit that real hard off the beginning. So we kind of went through the whole grazing season without any animals. And then we partnered with another local ranch. They brought in about 250 head of cattle.
Yeah. So, since you guys had the cattle on the farm, other animals on the farm, how did you guys manage the cattle this year? Was it utilized with electric fencing and you guys set up paddocks? How did you guys do it? I'm interested to know that because I know it's a laborious task, usually taking care of cattle. There's a lot that you got to look into and look after. So how did you guys manage it this year, on Ballantine Farms?
It's pretty standard to use electric fence to kind of partition off certain areas of the pasture and then rotate. So that way you can decide when and where the cattle are grazing, allow for that regrowth. And so that's kind of been the tool of choice for regenerative grazing for quite a while now. But more recently, in the last couple of years, really, here in the U.S., it's probably more like 5 to 10 years over in New Zealand, in some of those areas, they're actually using GPS collars on the cattle. So Each cow gets a collar, and then that connects to like a radio tower. There's a couple different systems, but it'll connect to GPS, and so you'll know exactly by satellite connected to your phone where your cattle are at. And then what you can do is you can draw what's called a virtual fence, and you draw that fence. It's an invisible fence. So as they get closer to that fence, it starts beeping, and then if they go too far, they'll get a kind of a corrective shock that'll turn them around. And frankly, once they try that once or twice, then from then on, the beep is what turns them around. It's a very humane, animal friendly tool, but it saves hours and hours of labor and setting up electric fences, pulling them down. It's obviously wildlife friendly. They don't even know it's there. And so if you're used to putting up electric fence, you're in areas like us here, you have deer and elk running through them. Then you're constantly having to put up fence that you already, put up once, twice. You're taking it down. It can definitely be some major labor costs. And so there's some really big efficiencies that are to be gained by going to collars. Obviously, electric fence is a good step. If someone has 20 cows, I think a lot of the collars you got to have like a minimum of 50 collars probably to kind of start using those in their systems. So the smaller guys, maybe hot wires the way to go. It's better than nothing, I would say. But yeah, so the cow that we had come on, they already had collars on. They go to the high country. They go to the national forest permits in the summer. They're used up there to help locate. And then we use them down here to kind of split our ground up and not graze everything at once where they're tracking and trailing all over the place. Just kind of graze in about 30 acres at a time and move through the property. So huge labor savings, both on being able to set up those virtual fencing, but also on location. And frankly, it's peace of mind as well. You can wake up in the morning, and if you're not right on site, you can have your morning coffee, look at your phone, all the cows are in, they're not running down the highway, and you can just sit back and have a second cut.
Yeah, no, that's nice, man. I tell you, and that's one of the major things. Like I said, it's a laborious task sometimes handling cattle and dealing with it. It's important. And what's neat is it kind of sounds like not only is it a management device, but it's a training device. So you kind of get a twofold type of, a benefit from it. Yes, it's going to train them, and it's like you said, it's humane. Yes, it'll shock them, but then they learn from those beeps, and that, I tell you, that can really help. I feel like the guys that are wanting to jump into that regenerative space and have cattle on their properties and things like that, but they just maybe don't have the amount of labor that they need to be able to manage them and move them and those types of things. So that's amazing, man. That's a great tool, and I'm sure that it's going to be used more and more as time goes for managing cattle and animals. So that's really neat.
Definitely. I can't see into the future, obviously, but my own personal opinion is within 5 years, you're going to see the vast majority of cattle owners with these collars from one company or another. I think it's a breakthrough in technology, and you're going to see it used more and more, and it's going to become cheaper and cheaper and more readily available.
Absolutely, especially with the way technology is going, right? It's perfect. And the next thing you know, there'll be AI tied into it. It's going to tell you where to graze, and before you know it, it's all going to be tied together, right?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, so you had the cattle on there, you've had animals on there, you've started this whole regenerative process of turning the farm over now, right? From that conventional farm, that conventional mindset over to this regenerative, regenerative farm, regenerative ranch. What are some things that you would say, some, stumbling blocks, things like that you would help others avoid? Like if somebody's wanting to jump into this and they're saying, hey, look, you know what? I'm a conventional guy, but I want to go this route. What are some of the bigger hurdles, or maybe even your biggest hurdle that you would suggest? Like, hey, you know what? I can help you here. This is something you definitely want to avoid. I think that's important for guys that are, just coming into it.
To just kind of shoot everybody straight. It's not a simple thing. So it's very doable, but it's not just just watch these 3 things and you'll be successful. It's a totally different paradigm, and like I said, it is very doable. So I would say one step to moving forward in it is tie yourself to knowledgeable people. Build a team around you that know soil science, that know cattle, that kind of figure out where your holes are at, and get good people on your team so that as you move forward, you're more chance of success. One of the big hurdles that I see, frankly, is people are very concerned with what the neighbor thinks of their property. And so a lot of times they're managing their ranch, they're managing their land with the neighbor's perspective in mind. What will they think if I leave too much grass there? What will they think if I'm not managing it like everybody else? So everybody else is cutting hay at this time and I'm not cutting hay. What are they going to say down at the coffee shop? And so that's frankly, that is a major hurdle, is just moving in a direction that the majority of people aren't going at the moment.
Sure. It's kind of like that mindset, I guess, right? You got to be able to say, hey, I'm stepping on the other side of the fence and I believe in it and I'm going to go for it. I mean, that's the easiest way.
That's it. Social pressure can definitely be a hurdle. The other hurdle, I think, is also, let's say, more of a mental hurdle than a physical hurdle, but it's really shifting our perspective towards investing in the future, long term. So we're not going to try and take everything we can this year and then do the same thing next year and then do the same thing next year. We're going to see what can we invest in the soil this year, not just monetarily, but what labor, what organic matter, what can we put back into the soil? How can we protect our soil so that we're setting building blocks for 2 years down the road, 3 years down the road, 5 years down the road. And that's difficult, because there's bills that are due this year. There's loan payments that are due this year. And so it's a hurdle to get over to start having a 5-year and a 10-year and a 20-year vision.
Absolutely. But the good part is like you said, as you look at that vision, and instead of just saying, I'm going to try to produce as much hay as I can this year, ship it down the road, that mind shifts. Next thing you know, you're saying, I'm going to keep as much hay on this property as I can. I'm going to build, that dense mat, covering the soil, doing those things that will pay off. It just doesn't necessarily mean it's going to pay off year one. It might be year 2, 3, 4, 5, far into the future. And then there will be, I guess, that point in time, I would guess, where that shift happens. And next thing you know, you're not so much worried about loan payments because you don't have 10 tractors you're operating. You don't have the fertilizer bills. You don't have all those bills that you just are like, man, I have to produce something and sell it due to the fact that I got bills to pay. So yeah, no, I could definitely see that for sure, Joel, and that would be a huge hurdle and something that you just kind of have to start shifting your mind and saying, okay, even if it's a small change, like I'm going to change this field over this year, get the economics down, then move on. I could definitely see that. And then not only that, but like you said, building a team, anything you do, and you understand this, you're in business, I know as well, but you have to have accountants, you have to have attorneys, you have to have the team of people that you need to surround yourself with. And I like that you said that you have to have that team built, the science side of it. Somebody as yourself that understands the cattle and the animal side of the whole operation, how to start cutting things out and what to look for. So it's multiple people that are involved in it. So that's great. And then I think just moving on now, what's kind of your vision? You're into it for a year now. You're saying, hey, it looks a little messy, right? The weeds are a good thing at this point due to the fact that we know we're hilling the soil. The soil's going to start coming around. Now let's look out, say 12 to 18 months. What is your vision? What do you want visitors to see, or what do you want people to see in Ballantine Farms, would you say, in like that 12 to 18 month period? What kind of changes? How are those visitors going to feel when they come onto the farm, say in 12 to 18 months?
I think some of the first differences that we'll start seeing is going to be as we come into next spring, because of the stubble and the grass layer that we left established and intact this year. So by leaving that, as we come into next spring and snow starts to melt, I think we'll see a quicker green up in the spring. But I think as well, as kind of how the seasons work here, we'll get our snow melt, and then we kind of have a gap until our irrigation water gets turned on in June. And usually that's pretty hot and dry. So May is going to be pretty hot and dry. And if you don't have irrigation water to put on, that can really set stuff back. And I think we'll see some real progress in the growth of our grass even through May, because we're protecting that moisture there from, late winter, early spring. So I think that's kind of one of those first signs of a shift that we'll see. And then our plan here is go through this next year, and focusing on growing and establishing that grass still, giving it the rest and sort of the space it needs to grow. And so we'll do our testing in the spring. We'll obviously be in touch with you and looking at, using the DNA test and stuff like that. What kind of biologicals we're going to put on? How can we help speed up some of this process? And then, but what we're going to do is we're going to use goats as a tool for this next year. So we'll be bringing on those 300 goats, bring them on, move them through, and we'll be able to graze certain areas more intensely, especially like I said, where those thistles are at.
Sure.
But really, we'll go over all the pastures and let them kind of knock back some of the stemmy, postia weed, bindweed, different things like that that are coming up. Give that grass a little space to grow. So they're selectively going to go after those forbs, and as long as we move them off quick enough, they actually won't touch that grass. If we leave them there hard for a long enough time, they'll get down to the grass. That's kind of the last thing. So we'll use that kind of like strategic grazing, and then into the fall, we should have a pretty well-established sod. All of our grass should be up. We'll let it mature. We'll let it go to seed. And so that's going to help really just put a seed population in the ground, in our soil here that is, in the millions, if not billions of seed. We'll bring cattle in and then we'll graze it before winter again. And then 2027, then we'll start looking at how do we bring in a herd and we'll start grazing here year round. Just because financially long term, it makes more sense for us to maintain our own herd year round than to lease out to somebody else. So we're kind of using that as a 2 to 3 year plan, 2 to 3 year
tool, I guess, out of the toolbox, right?
Yeah. Tool, absolutely. And really the biggest thing there is just the flexibility. So when you have cattle year round, you're constantly balancing, okay, my cattle need feed, grass needs rest. Do I feed hay? Hay costs. And so it's much more of a dance, and it's doable, and we plan on doing it. But starting out, I want to really overemphasize just really getting our engines roaring when we talk about life cycles in the soil. And so I want to be able to just bring in a bunch of cattle, graze it hard, be done, ship the cattle off, let that grass rest. And then we'll come back and we'll do that again. We'll do that again next year. And I think that'll put us on a solid enough foundation that we can work into purchasing our own herd in 2027.
Yeah, and that makes sense. So like we're saying like 12 to 18 months, hopefully those goats will come in. They'll knock back the weed pressure, not see as much weed pressure, let that grass establish. And then, like you said, if you were just to make that decision in 2026 to say, hey, we're bringing in right now, right here, we're going to go buy our own cattle, our own herd, then you do start to run into that. And that's some of that mindset shift, right? Like you have to be able to be like, okay, I don't necessarily need the herd today, or next year. I can wait another year to make sure that the soil, the grass gets caught up, everything's in the best possible shape in order to go do that. Or you'll go back to, I would guess, depending on potentially hay from people, going out and actually having to source more and more things from the outside just to keep that herd healthy and growing and things like that. So I definitely see that. That's great. And it's going to be an interesting shift to see. It's like you said, it's a dance, right? Like, what are we going to do to really help the soil, to help that grass come up? And as that dance gets better and better, 2027, it sounds like. So, that's approximately where we're looking. 18 months out, you guys will have your own herd. I know, like, are you guys preparing for that now then? Are you guys putting up corrals already? Or are you guys putting up some management so you can manage that cattle once you get your own as well?
Yeah, it's this first phase is a 2 to 3 year phase. And so it's building a foundation for the future. So that's everything from how we treat our soil, what we're putting into our soil, what life cycles we're getting started and ignited so that they take off. We're getting seed established. And then that's also in the infrastructure. So we're building fence because it was just a hay operation. There wasn't a need for fence. So we're putting up quite a bit of fence, water infrastructure. So there's easier access to water tanks for the cattle, working corral, facilities, squeeze chute, that sort of thing. Yeah, it's all of that's part of sort of phase one to get our base, our foundation established.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I know, and we talked before as well, and it's something, that you mentioned just a second ago, saying, hey man, there might be millions or billions of seeds even just from the seeding, right? And it's something that we had discussed. I don't know if you've done it or not, or if you've even discussed it with the ranch that had the cattle, but you and I had discussed like, hey, is there a possibility that we could take even cover crop seeds? Because really the goal is to keep tractors off the field, right? Like to minimize that impact as much as we can, to keep costs as low as possible, meaning fuel, time, all of those different things. And it was something that was very interesting to me that we had spoke about in the past regarding potentially even utilizing some of those cover crop seeds in feed with cattle to allow cattle to be able to go out there and spread that in the fields. Just through their manure and through their just normal practices. Have you thought any more about that? Or, I mean, is it something that may happen here, in 2026 or 2027?
Definitely thought about it. I've definitely thought about it just because it piques my interest. If there's a way that I can get seed out there that I'm not driving, I'm not using diesel, I'm not using time on, someone on a tractor going around. So the cattle that we brought in this year aren't our cattle. And so it wasn't an option to be feeding them seed and putting it out through the cow. So I haven't personally tested it. But it's definitely something that we're pursuing and going to be, at least trying out in the future.
I like it. I think it's something that'll work out great, and I'll be excited to see how that works. Maybe share that information with others, or, maybe the other people will even share it with us. Hey, yeah, we've tried this, so we get more confirmation, whatever that looks like. But that's an exciting part to it. And then I guess now moving on, we got that 12 to 18 month window. Your guys are building infrastructure. You're putting things in, really changing Ballantine Farms over to this regenerative showcase, you could say. And that's kind of what the Ballantine family wanted, right? Like that is what they were looking at. They want a regenerative farm. That was the vision, the goal. The great part is, and what I'm excited about is that, really what they want is they want a regenerative educational farm. They want it to be an open book type of a situation where people can go there, other ranchers, farmers, people that are interested in learning about it and learning about regenerative practices, learning about how did you guys turn this around from a conventional hay operation to, a regenerative system with animals, with all of these things. I know some beautiful buildings were built on the property just recently, which will be able to hopefully do some education through. And we're excited about that. We're excited about potentially going down there, partnering a little bit more with you guys, doing education, bringing people in and really spreading the word, letting people know this is possible. We can do it. This is what it takes, and really showing people. Is that kind of the vision that you're seeing as well? Like, is it being kind of a centerpiece for that education?
100%. Even before I was hired on, we were in discussions about what the role would look like and what the vision was. And it absolutely includes a piece of community impact. So our goal is to not just better ourselves and the 600 acres that I'm managing here, but be able to leave an open door for anybody who's interested. So, we're not trying to change the whole world. We're not trying to force stuff on people. We're just leaving that door open, and there's just a wide open invitation to see any and all aspects of our operation as we move forward. And, we're not perfect. We don't have everything figured out. So will we have some failures? Probably. And I'm okay. And, the Ballantine family is fine if people want to come along for the ride. We're learning as well. So we're open to people coming and listening, and we're also open to people coming and sharing suggestions. But we've got a good team put together. We've got quite a bit of experience in a lot of different areas, and so I feel confident about our trajectory and what we're doing. And yeah, we do. We have a nice facility here for classroom. Obviously, there's a wide open door for you guys to come do any sort of seminars. People come visit. I've got a great coffee machine, and we can sit down.
That's important.
Coffee, got to have that. And we can, walk out through the fields, phone calls, emails. It's been very clear to me that my purpose here is not only to impact these 600 acres, impact others who are interested in heading the same direction, or maybe just a piece of it. come and pick and choose and see what aspects of this fit your operation. And frankly, I love it. I love talking about things. I love discussing ideas. I love pushing the edge on how can we get seed out through cattle? How can we use GPS collars, new technologies, or try to be sort of the point of the spear in some different research and trying out some different things on the ground, but just tied to reality. I want to be genuine and authentic in what we're doing. So you can go online, you can find some pretty sweet YouTube shorts, different videos, stuff like that, where look at this regenerative farm and, they claim all kinds of things and show all kinds of videos and pictures and it can, some of it I'm sure is legit and it can get you excited, I guess. But just like on the ground level, come down and say, okay, you guys are using collars. Like, what are the difficulties of putting these things on? What have you guys run into? It's more that nitty gritty that it just takes a visit to the place and asking questions, and we're open to all of that. Absolutely.
That's great. Yeah. And I think that's what people need to hear, Joel. They need to hear the nitty gritty. They need to hear, or not just see the videos, see the beautiful pictures of a regenerative operation. And it was like, oh, it was a breeze. It just woke up one morning and guess what? It all was perfect. I was drinking coffee and things worked out great. Now, with that being said, maybe having that coffee pot on the top of the list for a regenerative farm, that might be something, right? That's kind of the way I look at it. But because that's what a lot of it is. It's the education, it's sitting down, talking, kind of like we had even with our coffee and soil meetings, which you came to here in Montrose at our place here. Sitting down, drinking coffee, talking soil, talking cattle, animals, these systems, like that's the nitty gritty of it. And that's what we're excited about as well. So if people do want to get in contact with you directly, Joel, or with Ballantine Farms, what is the best way to do that? What would you suggest? Is it phone, email? I would guess probably email to kind of get the conversation going and then move into a phone call if it's necessary. No, like you said, you're open book, but what's the best way?
Yeah, email is real simple to remember. timefarms@gmail.com. It rolls off the tongue. It's real easy. timefarms@gmail.com. That goes right to my inbox. It's the way. And wherever the conversation goes and whatever's good, I'd love to be a resource.
Absolutely. Yeah. And people also can reach out to us anytime at all. They can reach us at support@RockyMountainBioAg.com. If you have questions for us as well, we're more than happy to help people out. And that's the most important part with all this. So either way, you're just a great resource. You're a great resource for the farm, not only for the farm, but for the community as a whole. And I think people are going to learn a lot from you. I already have on the animal side of things, and it's something that I get excited about. So we definitely appreciate that and appreciate your time today, taking it with us to sit down, kind of talk the ins and outs of the farm, right? As we pass things forward, it helps others, which is really what we want to do at the end of the day. So definitely thank you very much for being on today, Joel.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for your kind words. And it's all about sharing and helping. And I'm excited to see what the future brings for Ballantine Farms and those that are part of the team.
Yeah, we are too. We're very excited. And also, I just want to say, definitely like, subscribe, follow this podcast. The next gentleman that we're going to have on is Dr. Kurt Livesay. He's the head of Alchemy Bioscience and Dynamite Ag. He's going to be bringing to the table some more on the biological side and, some more science side of this, of the soil. So definitely, like us, subscribe to it, follow the podcast. We're going to just continuously just give more and more information. So again, thanks a lot, Joel. You have a great day, and we look forward to the next one.
My pleasure. Have a good one.
You too. Take care. Thank you.